Thank you so much for tuning into this video. My name is Ariel Collier, and today, in partnership with Queering Shelter, we will be matching and stretching the topics in the title, Art, Poetry, and Creative Writing, to interrogate the complexities of home and how artists in these fields have expressed everything from their anxieties to their affinities. This is definitely not going to be your typical YouTube video. I'm going to ask you to stretch, to put your name in the comments, as well as how you identify your home. Then we're going to discuss Audre Lorde, James Baldwin, and the artistic fiber movement. Lastly, I'm going to give you a reflection exercise and encourage you to go watch the coinciding crochet lesson. To give you a little information about who you're listening to, again, my name is Ariel. I'm a budding poet, writer, visual artist, organizer, yada yada yada. I don't really make videos, so bear with me. The good news is that I've been wanting to get into this type of content for a while, but I've just found it difficult to get into the practice on my own. But I'm super excited to have the motivation and support of the Sheltering Project to make this video happen. Now let's take a good stretch. Pause the video if you like. Now let's get into Audre Lorde. She's my hero. She's for the writers who never enjoyed a literature class because it was too formulaic. She is for the poets who write a poem in one sitting, one stroke, and leave it. She is for the naturals, those who come out of the womb with the pen and paper clenched in their fists. She's for the gays, the lesbians, the queers, the all of the above. And here she is. A Litany for Survival by Audre Lorde. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone, for those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways coming and going, and the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward at once, before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures, like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours, for those of us who were imprinted with fear. Like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk. For by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us. For all of us, this instant and this triumph, we were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive. This poem is written in free verse, with no regular rhyme or meter. The line that stands out to me the most are, for those of us who were imprinted with fear, like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk, for by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found. I think about my own mother when I read this, and how easily fear is passed down from generation to generation. I think about the talks we've had about queerness, and how it's represented to her, as a dangerous and violent act to seemingly choose to be different, to be marginalized, as if it were a choice. I wish I could tell her. I think about how fear is an illusion, false evidence appearing real, and how I aim to be a queer walking truth, despite hardships I have and will face as a marginalized person. I think about how in order to do that, I had to leave home, put down my mother's milk, and find my own way towards a gay success story. Audre Lorde repeats, we were never meant to survive, touching on the ways in which Western society has pushed everything outside of whiteness into the margins, making resources less accessible. Today we face a housing crisis, a wage gap, and a food shortage. Black and brown people are affected the most, and of course if you add queerness into the mix, it gets even worse. Even if you have the ability to rent as a queer person, people discriminate against you in the housing market, requesting that they only have certain genders in the household, ignoring the needs of trans and non-binary people, and prioritizing heterosexual renters. What are some of the lines that stuck out to you in the poem? Let us know in the comments. Our next artist is James Baldwin, a well-known queer fiction writer and one of my favorites. We will be reading from a passage in his book, Giovanni's Room. To give you some context and a bit of a spoiler if you haven't read it, the main character, David, an American, meets an Italian man in Paris and they fall in love. David is not openly queer. In fact, he is engaged to a woman. But they are spending some time apart before they go back to America and get married. David hasn't told Giovanni his plan to leave, yet they have been living together in his tired old room for months. In this section, David is contemplating telling him, but the conversation diverges, and Giovanni says this: "Why, you will go home, and then you will find that home is not home anymore. Then you will really be in trouble. As long as you stay here, you can always think, one day I'll go home." He played with my thumb and grinned. "N'est-ce pas? Isn't it so?" "Beautiful logic," I said. "You mean I have a home to go to as long as I don't go there?" He laughed. "Well, isn't it true? You don't have a home until you leave it, and then, when you have left it, you can never go back." This particular moment stood out to me because it challenges the definition of home. Although Giovanni is saying this because he wants David to stay and can feel his detachment preparation to leave, it turns home from a physical place or people to an ideology, making it just a thought or a feeling, which I think is more true. When we miss home or feel nostalgia, we are prioritizing the memories of it, not the current reality. In my own case, when I go back home to Florida, it never feels like it used to. Things have changed, and sometimes not for the better. Specifically in Florida, there is a sense of unsafety for queer people and those in my line of work who are interested in teaching and engaging with critical race theory and the like. So home has been transformed for me, and the thirst I have for it can only be quenched by reminiscing or witnessing similarities in present things. Talking to my family is not the same as it used to be, but luckily the partial belonging is still there, and I hold on to it as tight as I can manage. Are there aspects in people that trigger memories of home for you? If so, what are they? What can make home hard to come back to? Is it the space, the people, the representation of it? Let us know in the comments. Now let's talk a little bit about the fiber art movement before I send you off to my next video about crochet. You might be wondering what crochet has to do with poetry and creative writing, or even confused on whether it's an art form at all. And you would be right to question it. They are seemingly random, and yarn or fiber-based projects are often seen as craft, not art. But in my practice, I have found multiple ways in which these themes connect. The coming together of hand and mind. I craft my own self-regulation, cycling through the full expression of every emotion. These shadow tactics, hidden in our subconscious mind. I pray that I get it together quickly, find work that treats me gently. I came up with this short poem while I was crocheting. For me, the act of moving does wonders for my creative brain. Sometimes I take walk and freestyle on my voice notes app, or make songs while I'm cooking. And they all seem to be quite simple things, yet studies have shown that movement-based multitasking increases neuroplasticity, which is the ability to create new neural connections. Arts and craft is something a bit different. This is where people take things that they normally would use in their daily life, such as paper plates and chopsticks, to make art. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about works like Alan Jones's controversial chair, or more specifically, fiber artists like Magdalena Abakanowicz. Born in 1930 in Poland and came of age in the Second World War. Living in Poland under the communist regime, she had to flee and leave behind the wealth that her family had accumulated. She found safety in these large structures and created an international career from her work with them. Fiber art refers to fine art whose material consists of natural or synthetic fiber and other components, such as fabric or yarn. It focuses on the materials and on the manual labor on the part of the artist as a part of the work's significance. Research from Stonewall shows that 1 in 5 LGBTQ+ people have experienced homelessness at some point in their lives, and although crochet, poetry, and creative writing might not solve this issue, I believe it could help us heal and self-regulate, while also making nice things for the home we will eventually find. Thanks for watching. I know the video was quite long, so if you stayed until the end, I appreciate it. Feel free to go back into the comments and chat about anything that you found interesting or anything that I could improve on. I'm sorry if my voice was too low. I have been recovering from an illness for the past couple months. But it was wonderful to get an opportunity to do this and talk about things that I truly care about. But yeah, I hope to make more videos in the future, and shout out to Queering Shelter for making this video possible. Bye! See you in the next video.